Hello ladies and gentlemen, today the chess world was in for a rather rarely seen treat because the reigning world champion was playing against the reigning ladies world champion in the Champions Chess Tour. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to have a look into what two world champions can entertain us with when they meet over the board. So let's dive right into it. On the menu between Magnus Carlsen and Wenjun is the Ruy Lopez, one of the most popular openings out there and one of the most analyzed one among all openings. And here the Chinese Grandmaster entertains us with the Archangel variation, a very sharp and ambitious response against the Ruy Lopez, fitting to a world champion. So our players are following theory for a fair while. And here Magnus, instead of playing the very thematic and hugely theoretical d4, instead opts for the far more solid, but perhaps a little bit more timid d3 setup. So now the position is going to stir towards a far more maneuvery type of game rather than sharp tactical complications that would occur after d4. Castles, bishop g5 was played, h6, a rather natural response to kick that bishop, bishop h4 and rook b8. Now this move is a little bit strange. Obviously the Chinese world champion decided to remove the rook from a potential trade, but yeah, other options were available, including b4. Needless to say that the engine, of course, approves of rook b8, but nonetheless, I can't help but feel that it's a little bit funky. AB, a very logical response from Carlsen to grab the open file, although many would argue that it's largely hypothetical because the rook has no penetration points, which makes having an open file a little bit of a moot point. Knight d2, bishop c8, a very interesting positional idea to reroute the bishop. And this is one of the key points behind playing d3 instead of d4. When white plays d4, both of the central pawns are a little bit wobbly. They can actually become targets rather easily. With d3, however, whilst this bishop has got an extended diagonal, his body on b7 has nothing to bite into because the e4 pawn is so nicely supported by the one on d3, so it makes perfect sense to reroute the bishop to this diagonal. However, sneaky Carlsen here comes up with an absolutely amazing idea that I wouldn't say I have never seen, but it's quite unique, and a lot of different circumstances needed to align for this move to work, and that was this bishop d5, a really cunning positional idea, sort of embedded rather, excuse me, into tactical resources. So this is an ultimate mixture when you see the two different worlds clashing, the positional maneuvery chess, which is justified by tactical ideas. Let me show you what I'm talking about. After bishop takes, pawn takes, quite surprisingly, the knight is actually short of squares. It turns out that having conquered the a file actually is about to yield results. Now the two knight moves are knight a7 and knight e7, and both of them come with severe consequences. Knight a7 puts these two pieces in a very awkward scenario, and after bishop takes f6, black can't retake with the queen, because there comes a beautiful tactical sequence. Knight e4, knight takes c5, and rook takes a7. No matter what black does in the interim, is going to win a piece for the world champion with the white pieces against the world champion with the black pieces. And so if pawn has to take back, this structure is just unplayable. Knight h4, knight f5 ideas are going to break through on the king's side immediately. Likewise, after knight e7, we also have bishop takes f6, d4, an excellent move to open up this diagonal as well as the queen's vision towards d4. And after takes knight e4 with the subsequent knight h4, queen h5 ideas, this attack is borderline impossible to halt. And so the Chinese GM had to recognized that this was not going too well, and she dropped the bishop back to d7, thus losing a very valuable tempo. b4 was played, bishop b6, and the bishop went back to b3. So having played b4 means that now the knight and the bishop also lost a square on a5, and also b5 is now a fixed weakness. g5, bishop g3. Overall, by the way, black's position is still perfectly fine. Knight h5, and here comes a crazy tactical sequence. We see that the knight is vulnerable. Loose pieces drop off, as per John Nunn. However, after knight takes e5, of course, Wenjun reckoned with knight g3, which is actually not capturable due to the pin. So now absolutely bonkers complications will occur after takes, and rook e1. Wowzers! And it turns out that although the knight is not capturable on g3, neither does it have any retreat path available for it, which means that every chance that it's going to be rounded up. Again, the Chinese world champion responds in the most impressive fashion by counterpunching immediately in the center, tempting white to take with the pawn, thus allowing the knight to go back to f5. And here it's still dead even. It's a world champ against the world champ, so it's meant to be. But after knight e7, queen g4, unfortunately, Wenjun, he dropped the ball, and the reason for that, I dare say, is the time discrepancy that you can see on the screen. Magnus has used only 5 minutes of his time, whereas the ladies world champ only has 1 minute left on the clock, and so here it must have been a rushed decision to drop back to f5. Queen d6 would have kept the balance when the knight is still protected by the queen, and so I have to take. And this, although is similar to the game, but here black has a quick route to conquer a very important open file, and it's likely that she could have held actually from here on out. Unfortunately, however, for her, instead she dropped back to f5, and now rook e7, queen takes f5, basically recreated the same position with several pluses for white. The main one being this knight check attack on the king. It's extremely annoying, but nonetheless, she should have tried rook a8 even here, forcing at least this rook into passivity. King g7, knight e4 was played, rook e8, d6 is an excellent move here to break up the pawns and to open up the queen's path towards b5, queen e5, and g4. Now that was a weird move. Turns out that the beautiful queen takes, and knight retreat actually would have done the damage, because now after the obligatory takes, d4, and the rook has only 1 square left on the board, which is quite amazing because it seems to have so much to go to. But in fact, rook e8 is only, and now comes a forcing sequence of check, take, and the white knight just mows down the entire queen side, and white is going to emerge with 3 connected pass pawns, which they should be able to convert without too many dramas. But here, Magnus also plays a little bit inaccurately, but eventually we are going to land in this endgame scenario, once again, very similar to what I just showed you, where although Magnus is an exchange down, but the number of pawns is quite intimidating, and since it's an endgame scenario, those pawns are going to gain strength and momentum very quickly. Bishop f4, knight c5. Now that's another filthy one. Knight e6 check is now the threat, not the pin on the f-pawn. Rook e1 check, king up to g2, and the king had to drop back to g8 to find safety. And here comes a second invasion with the knight, and now I think it's truly, well and truly, the time trouble decided the game. That being said, there was not a lot to be done, because if the rook moves anywhere at all on the back rank, we have knight f6 check followed by rook takes f7, and that is just an easy win for white. Instead, however, the ladies world champ went rook e7, allowing knight f6 check, and after king g7, Magnus was very cruel. He didn't even take the rook, allowing king f6. Check first, and then he would take on e7. But Wenjun resigned the game here. And so that was the big clash between the reigning men world champion against the ladies world champion. A very exciting game where actually Wenjun managed to hold her own really, really well. And in fact, on the board, for the majority of the game, it was pretty even, but unfortunately on the clock she fell a little bit behind, and Magnus exploited this factor remarkably well. I would say worthy of a world champion. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I think it was a great game. I look forward to seeing you again. Make sure that you like, you comment, and you subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.